All right, gonna do a little something different on this video. Gonna add a little commentary just because it was a unique tournament. I had a few situations that I wanted to show in the video and were hard to keep in there without explaining. So nothing crazy out of the gate here. This first clip is just my first fish catch. It ended up being a smallmouth. I have no idea why, but I had a few smallmouths show up on this day. I think I weighed 3 of them in. This was an area I had a bunch of bites in practice. It was by myself, away from the crowd. Pulled in, I caught 3 fish right away, smallmouth, then a little largemouth, and then another little smallmouth behind it. So these dudes rolled up in a pontoon boat. It was 3 or 4 young kids. It was like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, but they had music going. They were having a good time. Cut it up with them a little bit, ended up catching one in front of them, and it was a third keeper.
Oh, here we go.
So at this point, I ended up making a move from where I was fishing in the morning. I was kind of generally all by myself anyways. And I moved over to a major community hole where I had a lot of bites in practice. And it was crazy in there. There was a ton of guys. It had to be 3/4 of the field in a generally small area. One of the things you had to deal with was guys catching fish around you. You see in this clip here, this guy was catching a fish. He caught a couple fish right in front of me. It didn't bother me at all. It really helped, honestly, learn where the limits of these schools were, what the tide windows were. So it wasn't a bad thing, but it made it difficult to move around, difficult to make the exact cast you wanted to make or sit where you wanted to sit. So it was a factor in the tournament for sure. Another clip here again, you can see there's just people everywhere. But I ended up moving in here. I caught 3 or 4 fish, filled out my limit, and I had a pretty good start to my day by mid-morning that you'll see here in just a second. So at this point of the day, I had a limit for maybe 9 or 10 pounds, which honestly I think was a decent pace looking back at it. At the time, I felt like I was a little behind, or maybe the quality wasn't there, but I had a limit. I knew a bunch of guys around me didn't. They'd catch a fish and they wouldn't cull, so I knew I was ahead of pace. I had a little sweet spot here where I felt like there was a group of fish, and things were going smooth. So yeah, I was happy with it at this point, even though the size wasn't really there. So at this point, I ended up making a not very good decision. I ended up moving from the little community hole where I caught 3 or 4 keepers all the way to the other side of the Susquehanna Flats, and checked 2 or 3 different areas that I thought had schools with some potential of bigger size. And ultimately, what it ended up being was a giant waste of time. I spent 2 or 3 hours probably looking around trying to relocate these schools. I couldn't find them, and it got my day really off the rails. So I eventually ended up moving back to the community hole, and you can see here how thick it was with guys. They were everywhere, and I just couldn't get back on the fish. The tide had really changed. I lost my little sweet spot, and it took me a long time to find another little group of fish that ultimately, here in a second, you'll see I end up making a decent call. But yeah, that bad decision to leave that community hole really cost me probably a third of my day of wasted time. So this was back in my little sweet spot. It took me a while to refine the school, but I had ended up moving a little shallower into some thicker grass as the tide got lower, and this was the one fish I ended up pulling out of it, but it was a decent call and kind of got me going again. So at this point, I moved back off the community hole to where I started in the morning. You can see the tide was a lot lower. You can see the matted up grass behind me there, or to my right. And this fish here, I ended up having a largemouth follow my bladed jig in, and I turned around and grabbed a general and tossed it over the side, and a smallmouth grabbed it. So I don't know what was going on, but I'll take it. Again, 3 smallmouth. I ended up weighing in this day. I have no idea where they came from. I didn't catch a smallmouth all practice, but I was glad to have them, and it was a decent call. Cool. So this is getting late in the day. Time is really running out. I was having a pretty tough day. I was catching, I caught a fair number of fish, but the size just wasn't there. And I was really starting to get worried that where I was going to drop in the points. Not good thoughts to be having while you're on the water during competition, but this one kind of salvaged my day. You can see I was pretty jacked up about it. It was a big fish. And I think I say here after I get it in that it was 9 minutes to go in my day before I had to leave for check-in. So this was a really important fish for finishing the day strong.
Yes. Yes. Same as that. Oh my God. 9 minutes to go.
So that was it for day one. I ended up with 13 pounds even. I was somewhere in the 60s or 70s in the standings, about mid-pack, just above mid-pack maybe, but way off the lead, way off the top 10 cut. Dropped me down in the points pretty good after one day, but I was hopeful for day two that I'd get things turned around and catch a big bag. So day two, I ended up starting right in front of the ramp. I didn't have the camera on for my first two fish catches, but I caught two little bitty ones. I ended up trying for some retreads right there by the ramp to get the day going. Spent maybe an hour, hour and a half there, and all I had to show for it was two little bitty ones. So I ran out to where I ended day one and ended up catching a couple good keepers to get started. So I thought I was going to have a good day and maybe be able to get myself back into contention to get a check.
Crazy.
So after those first two fish out in the flats, I struggled the rest of the day. I could not get a bite. We had a lot of dirty water roll in, and this is about 20 minutes left in my day. Finally, the tide got low enough to push some clear water out where some of my schools were. Moved on to a school that I didn't get a chance to fish on day one, and caught my fifth fish finally.
That's fine. Jesus. That's pathetic.
So that was it. I caught 5 keepers all day and ended up with 11 pounds 9 ounces, which put me in about 78th or 79th place in the final standings, which wasn't very happy about. But honestly, with kind of the way I fished, the decisions I made, my attention to detail, my focus, that was probably what I deserved. It wasn't a true bomb down in the hundreds or bottom third of the field, so salvaged that, which I was happy with, but I wanted to be in a lot better position going into the 4th tournament as far as qualifying for the EQs. This put me in like 35th place in the points, and there was a chance that if you went to the St. Lawrence and didn't catch them, I could fall out of the EQs, and that would not have been good. So again, that's kind of what I get for playing it safe and not having great focus and detail. But ultimately made it out of there. Got a good shot at making the EQs heading into New York with a tournament on St. Lawrence River where I'm very familiar. So off we went. It was the very next week, and I'll get that video out shortly.